welcome back to Just Now, the podcast about grit, grace, and getting punched in the face. My name is Jess Monemini, and with me as always is my co-host, Anton Taylor.
How's it, guys? We are in our podcast covering a wide range of topics, but today we're going to be talking about body image and body dysmorphia.
I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge one of our sponsors, Revive. So Revive is a hydration formulation that is the perfect balance between magnesium, sodium, and potassium that delivers optimal hydration to your body. Just 750 mils of water mixed with one Revive is all that you need for optimal hydration. For more information, visit getrevive.co.za. Iron Curtain Security is a software and hardware company that specializes in the supply, installation, and design of CCTV and early warning detection security. For more information, visit ironcurtainsecurity.co.za. Ligam Fight Gear supplies fighters, coaches, and gym owners with premium quality, competition-grade traditional fight gear with a modern edge. All Ligam Fight products are designed, tested, and engineered by professional MMA fighters. For more information, visit ligamfightgear.com and use the promo code JustNow10 for a 10% discount when purchasing.
So Anton, we decided to take on this very big topic today of body dysmorphia. And I think it's important to maybe just explain a little bit about what body dysmorphia is about. So I did a little Google, Dr. Google, and the Mayo Clinic says that essentially body dysmorphia is this flawed image of yourself, right? And that the person with body dysmorphia may spend hours trying to fix this idea of themselves. They may try cosmetic procedures or exercise excessively, and that it's got a lot to do with just kind of how you view yourself in the mirror, over and over. That you just don't see what you want to see.
Yeah.
Is this something that you've ever kind of experienced or gone through yourself?
Absolutely, it's something I fucking live with. As I'm listening to the definition, I'm wondering how many people actually do see themselves. I mean, you could get very deep, like how many of us see ourselves as if we had somebody else's eyes? And, I think that can extend, and probably in these cases, like, do you see how great you are? Can you see that all we have to offer? And, it's always the age-old thing when you look back at photos of when someone's younger and you're like, oh shit, I was actually young and good looking then and I wish I'd known it. So I think it's funny, man, growing up, when I look back at myself at school, I was very lean and I had long flowing black hair, and in hindsight I was good looking kid, but back then I was crippled with, worrying about what people thought and insecurities. And I remember back then in terms of my body, I always felt like I had proper fucking abs, but I was like, oh, your arms are so small. It's like you're never happy. And so what happened with me was after school, just lifestyle, drinking, eating, I put on a lot of weight. And I was able to successfully drop it. But subsequently, and maybe some people who've lost weight, you always feel a bit like a fat person in remission or something. And, I know with my girlfriend, she's often because I often feel fat. And I'm for me, I'll have a little bit of weight and I'm oh God, I'm such a fat fucking pig. And my girlfriend's bro, what? Please. So I think the idea of, I haven't had too many times, and it is where you have moments where you're okay, I'm happy with how I look. But I think it's something, and that's why I'd be lying if I were to say, oh, well, I feel great about my body and let me, fucking preach to the audience. It's something I work with all the time. And just trying to feel and it's not that I don't feel confident. I think I'm always just you could be a bit skinnier, or a bit leaner. So it's definitely, and I think when I was younger, when they talk about the sort of body dysmorphia, and I think what's cool about the subject is it's not just often, I think when you think of these disorders, one might think of, say, women, and particularly with eating and weight, but a lot of guys through gym culture and stuff, we worry about how we look. And what I think is really tough is that, most men that you see, in bodybuilding, obviously, but a lot of guys who you see topless have taken shit, and I'm not going to weigh in on whether that's good or bad, but I think it's very hard if you don't know about that and you're oh, I wish I could get bigger. And it's bro, unless you're taking some hectic juice or whatever, you can't necessarily always get there. So I think a lot of the time guys feel like, oh, I'm not muscular enough. And, sometimes there would be stages when I was, like when I left school, I'd like gymmed and I like ate. So I had this like, it's quite funny, I had like a book.
Biceps and a belly.
Yeah, literally. What a classic. So I have like still stretch marks on my guns, and then like I had stretch marks on my book. But I had fucking big arms, which was pretty cool. But I'd wear certain outfits to make me look big. And like, look, I'm sure there's a sliding scale of when it becomes a problem or not. And obviously you have certain clothes that you wear that you think are flattering. And for me, it's still like a journey where it's like, I do feel like, oh, but if you got a bit leaner, and I don't know if it's like a point that I need to reach of leanness or probably a point within myself where you can be like, okay, well, actually you look good, Yeah, man, but it's a tough one. I don't have I haven't come through it yet completely.
I think it's cool that we're talking about this, and it's cool that you can bring the male perspective, because as a female, it's just a given. We struggle with how we look in the mirror. Like there's magazines about it, there's movies about it. Like it's normal.
Yeah.
So you just kind of grow up believing like you're supposed to feel shit about yourself, because every woman does. But I think guys don't talk about it enough, and certainly it's not very attractive to be an insecure man. I think it's definitely more forgiving to be an insecure female, and it's like, oh, she's just shy. It's okay, she's just shy about herself. Yeah. But as a guy, there's this like, you need to kind of look like you're cool with who you are.
Yeah.
In terms of being attractive.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that you can talk about it is awesome, because I think there's a lot of men that are quietly going through this struggle in whatever it is, whether it's being overweight and losing weight, whether you feel like you'd like to be bigger from a muscular perspective and you can't, there's just not enough conversation around it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because you almost feel like, it's so true, you should be like, oh, I just feel like so confident and walking around. And as you say, I mean, I think it's more normalized for women to talk about the challenges with like, in the media, like there's how from both, genders, the people that are presented are often like very attractive, hard to reach kind of people. So I mean, I think it's helpful, and I think often guys are like, they feel like they don't want to let down their guard, to start saying like, yeah, bro, sometimes I just feel like a fat pig or something, and I feel like a lot of guys would be like, if you ask them kind of that kind of question, I'm not sure what they would, say, but it's interesting because many girls that I know from my sister, it's like girls often like, to girlfriends, it's like often feel that they wish they were like skinnier, and I think it's like, it's interesting because it's like a constant assault on people to be like, to try and be like, I can feel okay with how I'm looking,
where I'm at. So what was your weight loss journey like? Because firstly, you said you were lean, like when you growing up, right? Did you gradually realize that you were putting on weight? Was it a conscious thing? So I've never, I'm going to sound like such a dick saying this, but I've never been overweight.
Oh God, it must be good, yeah.
And I've often wondered, do you not catch yourself somewhere and go like, especially if you don't come from an obese family and you didn't struggle with your weight from when you were very little. So if you were an in-shape person and you then got fat, was there not a moment where you're like, okay, cool? Because I've always been very aware of the scale.
Yeah.
So it's always like, okay, now I'm 2 kgs heavier than I've ever been, like it's time to reel it in.
Yeah.
Like, was there a point in that getting fatter process where you're like, let's stop? Or did you just wake up one day and you're like, I'm fat?
It's so interesting. And I think for me, I think why I get scared of being overweight again is I associate that time with being quite out of control. So I think at that time I was eating to moderate my feelings. And, like sometimes I would drink to moderate, but I was like, I wanna just, because, eating is a way in which we soothe ourselves. And say I would go party, and then on a Sunday I'd be hungover and I'd go to KFC and I would get like a family,
Feed
like
the hangover,
literally like insane. And it was like, God forbid that I'm not full, like I need to be full, and like almost gorged. And I think there was 2 things happening. I think one was I was like, I want to get big, and I was like protein shakes. And I remember I was in Res, and a lot of young guys get this thing where they're like, I need to get bigger, I need to put on mass. And so you just like you eat so fucking much. So I was in Res, so I would eat the fucking food there and the bread, and then I would like go home to my parents' house, and my parents were divorced. So there were evenings where I'd have res dinner, dad dinner, mom dinner.
Nice.
And you feel that you can justify no, but I need to put on size, and then you're having protein shakes. So I think at that time, it was everything towards the aim of getting big. And I think I probably didn't realize that you often, I think the word's fat, strong guys, where you kind of bulky. But in hindsight, I'm like, no, it's cooler to be lean. But one thing I will say, man, is there were periods where I was just fat. And I was very aware of it, painfully aware. And I wanted then to be thinner more than I do now, in that I cared more what people thought. Now as I've got older, I don't really, and I think that's part of the problem, is I don't know if I care enough to fucking starve myself to get abs, so that I can impress some people on the beach. But back then I was I felt so acutely aware, and I just didn't have the tools, I didn't, for example, as you go through life, you realize, okay, if I eat certain foods, I tend to put on weight, or some foods you can feel quite satisfied with after a while. Others, you
just
want more, So it's been this process. So I think I have a lot of sympathy for myself. And when I see photos of myself, as much as I, fat shame myself, I'm like, shit, that dude was trying his best, And I think I was it's interesting for you to ask, because I do feel much better about my appearance now. And as much as I'm I wish I was, there's always a little bit. Then I used to feel chronically, not sort of okay with how I looked, and always embarrassed, not going to the beach and feeling a bit sort of shy. So, it's, and then for you, I'm interested. So, because most people, all they want to do is be skinny, right? So if you are someone who's never really been overweight, do you just walk around feeling stoked about yourself the whole time, or how does it work?
So it's interesting because, I was a smaller person, struggled to, never really had issues with putting on weight. So I ate whatever I wanted to growing up, and I was always the girl with abs, and something that everybody always spoke about was oh, but you've always got abs.
Yeah.
So I think genetically, some people do 2 push-ups and they have biceps. Other people just have abs, but there were fat deposits in other areas that did, I never liked my legs, my arms were skinny, but they were fat. So I definitely had stuff going on. But always felt very weak. So that was a big thing, is I just didn't feel like I couldn't. I remember doing this one, what do you call those outdoor, those races, those outdoor races? The Muddy Princess comes to mind.
Are you running on your legs though?
Yeah, and climbing over obstacles.
I know, it's like an MP challenge or something. Yeah,
that type of thing. So one was called The Grind.
Okay, nice.
And I wasn't 100% part of this gym like I am now.
Yeah.
And Anisha, who's my main training partner now, she was very much in the space and strong. And I was kind of trying to keep up with her. I think I just had my second kid or something. And there was this thing you have to scale yourself over a wall basically. And I ended up going under, because not a fuck could I lift my own body weight over. And I just remember feeling like such a loser. How can I not bring myself, as a small person, I can't essentially do a pull-up to scale over this wall. And that was a big change for me, where I was I also want to be able to, if I'm running from somebody, I can't scale a wall. How am I going to get away? In the practical sense of the world. So for me, it was more around feeling strong and not feeling capable in my body. And then after having a baby, then things changed completely in terms of I lost the weight, but there was a lot more fat than what there was before. So I started for the first time really getting into the idea of fitness and training. And it can become, you obviously you compare yourself to other people. So for me, similar to you, where you kind of, I started not wanting to be skinny. I started wanting muscle. I think if you have been overweight, especially as a female, then just losing the weight is enough. Getting skinny is enough. But if you've kind of always been a skinny, frail person, then then getting stronger is, and that muscle can be addictive as well. Certainly now I feel it. So now that I'm not in a current weight cutting phase, because I don't have a fight coming up, the biggest I've been since being pregnant on the scale, which in itself was quite wild to deal with. But the size, I've come to like my big arms and my biceps and my bigger quads. And I'm quite sad to see that go as I start to cut weight for a fight. But I think I can see how people can become addicted to that, men or women.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's like, when is big? When are you big enough? When is it?
Yeah.
When is it enough? And the same thing with skinny. I train a lot of personal training clients who just want to lose weight, and it's just like it's never enough. And like you said, you always, maybe part of you sees yourself as this fat kid inside.
Yeah.
Always, I do have clients like that too, where they're just never going to stop beating themselves up for being that fat person. And I guess it's not so much about how it looks in the mirror, but it's the lifestyle or the lack of control that you mentioned that comes with that being overweight. So the inability to have the discipline around whatever, the bread, the cookie, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think for me it sometimes feels like if I open that door for a little bit, if I reward myself, if I eat something bad, then I'm gonna become a fat pig, or I'm gonna go be back to that dude. And it's like, knowing that that reality is past, it's a different way, But I think, so often it can be like, I think of, guys say with their hair, which is different, but guys as they get older, a lot of them start to lose, their hair starts to get thinner. And it's something that bugs men so fucking much, And I realize it's the kind of thing you can get obsessed about and worry, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really fucking matter. You think, my hair, my hair as I've got older has got a bit thinner, I shave it. And, it's actually quite cool when you can get to a moment you're like, it doesn't fucking...
Yeah.
And what I realized, if I had big poofy hair, no one's also going to really give a fuck. And I think it's you're not going to suddenly have people stopping you and saying, oh my God, you're so good looking. And so I think it's the same, which would be fucking cool if they did. But it's the same with one's weight. You're like, oh my gosh, if I could just get to this point. Yeah. It's like, no one's going to give a fuck, And I think what I found interesting was, when I'm feeling ripped, I'll put myself topless on fucking social media. And I want to say to all the listeners, I endorse fucking topless thirst trap photos and irrespective of how you look, man, because it's it's
if
hard. If you're
feeling
feeling it, put it out there. Yeah. And when I was overweight, I used to also put myself out there, and I'd be jiggling around with my belly, and everyone was like, ha, ha, ha. Then when I started to get ripped, and I put up topless photos, I'll start to be like, why are you always topless in your photos? And it's like, bro, you didn't give a fuck when I was fat and making me feel good about yourself. Now when I've lost weight, it's like, oh no, and that's fucked up, where it's I think if you are telling people what they should be fucking wearing and you're having any response, I think you've got some proper demons. But it was funny for me that it was when I started to look good, then people, so it's oh, okay, if you feel comfortable about you, it's fine.
It's so interesting. So, I mean, there's two sides of this. Obviously, there's the idea of fat shaming, and it's some people need that kind of motivation to get off their butts and get into shape, but it's frowned upon.
Yeah.
But fit shaming is a real thing too.
Yeah.
And I've physically discovered that through fight camp. So as I'm preparing for a fight, my body changes. I'm obviously in a calorie deficit. I'm needing to make a certain weight on the scale. The scale becomes very important. Every little morsel of food that I put inside my body, I can tell you how many calories is in a fucking flat white compared to a cortado, because I know what that means in terms of the calories I need to take in. In itself can be obsessive. But it makes other people really uncomfortable when you are on a weight loss journey, for whatever reason that is. My mom is the worst with this. So whenever I'm in fight camp, and she's quite overweight at the moment, but growing up she never was, and it makes her fucking uncomfortable when I'm in shape. It's the shame that comes, the shaming that comes into it. And I know it's more of a them problem than it's a me problem, but it's very interesting that we often celebrate the overweight. And if you can make it a comedic relief, and I think that's the difference, is that a lot of guys, when they're overweight, it becomes like a joke amongst the boys, and they'll jiggle each other's bellies around, whatever. You don't find girls doing that. Never. It's never going to happen. We pretend it's not there. It's no, your butt doesn't look big in those jeans. You look great. You know what I mean? It's a completely different approach. But I think as long as you're able to make fun of yourself, everybody else will celebrate that with you. Yeah. But the minute you start getting into shape, it does make those around you quite uncomfortable. And then there is this level of why are you eating healthy? Why are you being so boring? I guess it's the same around alcohol. Yeah. When you decide that you're finding now not going to drink when you go out, makes people hella uncomfortable.
And do you get people telling you that it's that you don't look healthy, or that you're too ripped, or some kind of bullshit like that? Or is it mainly oh, you're boring, or?
I think it's around being boring. when I'm in fight camp, I often will get comments by more internet strangers or around looking like a man, like too masculine. Obviously, as your body fat percentage lowers, your muscles now pop more. So it can have a bit more of a masculine kind of look to it. So I would get comments like that. But I've just started hanging out with people that understand, to be honest. So like the one person that I need to navigate is my mom still. But everybody else is like, they're in the space. So there's more of a respect around, knowing what it goes into. And I think maybe in a weight loss journey space, like a Weight Watchers, perhaps that's the beauty in that type of community, is that everybody's on the same journey with you. So they're able to motivate you instead of try and pull you off.
Exactly. What I mean, it's so funny. My theory is in South Africa, a lot of the men play rugby. And for rugby, you need like a bigger build, And so, particularly when I first lost weight, I'll get guys being like, "Oh, you're so skinny, bro. Like, oh, you weigh so little." And it's like, if I'm not going to be playing a sport where dudes are running into me, I don't need to be fucking 15 kgs heavier than I am. And I'm always like, but if you're involved in fighting or something, like if you have excess weight, you're going to have to fight someone fucking taller and bigger who can hit really hard. So I think, for me, sometimes it's like, "Oh, bro, like I've had like, oh, you're skinny," or often it's a bit about like, why are you boasting? Why are you putting yourself out there? And again, that's why I'm like, because it's fucking hard. It's hard. I find it quite hard to maintain a thin, slim body or whatever. So I'm like, well, let me fucking celebrate it, But I mean, I'm wondering for you, how has like fighting and being a fighter, because there your body has to like, as you say, you like drop a whole lot of fucking weight. And what does that do to your like image of yourself? And what's it like being fucking ripped for a fight and then, knowing that that's just a temporary sort of thing? Yeah.
It's rough. I think I've never been faced with the idea of an eating disorder or the idea of body dysmorphia until I started fighting. And it actually led me into doing some research around if I was the only fucking one that went through this. Because sometimes I think that there's a blessing and a curse in being so like, fucking, what's the word, woke. Just so like emotionally aware of everything, because I can kind of get very cerebral and overthink things. But I did a little internet dive and it turns out that like quite a lot of fighters go through the same thing. Yeah. Because we go through this cycle of intense restriction and then we fight and then we binge. And so there's something actually called post-starvation obesity. And it is something that, like, if you've been in a famine, like we're talking starving kids in Ethiopia that our parents told us to, finish our food because there's kids in Ethiopia that are starving. You'll take kids like that out of that starvation space and feed them normal amounts of food, and they'll become obese really quickly because the body is like hungry for nourishment. And so you put on size very quickly. And the same thing happens with fighters. I mean, you look at like the Paddy Pimblett, for example. He's now on the other side where he's celebrating what happens with him. But essentially he's restricted himself so much to lose so much weight, and then he binge eats like a crazy person and then quickly blows up. And it's really hard to restrict and then not binge. Because the fight is like, as soon as I fought, then I can reward myself. And it's hard for one milkshake not to stay at one milkshake. It becomes 10 very quickly because like I don't have to make weight.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's like hard to find balance when you in a very period of withholding and denying yourself, and then especially depending on how much weight you've cut. Now, then the answer might be, well, then why cut weight? But the reality is that as long as everyone's cutting weight, you have to cut weight. So for me, I fight at 52 kgs. It will be much easier for me to fight at 57 kgs. But then I've got to fight somebody I'm already short for my division. Then I've got to fight somebody that's got like orangutan arms and is like, 3 heads bigger than me. It becomes a whole other story. And he's maybe cutting down from
65 or whatever. So as long as everyone's cutting weight in this space, we have to keep cutting weight. And so there are these intense periods of restriction. And I think more than the restriction, because that becomes quite a good muscle. Like the more you do it, the less you crave. So the more sugar you restrict, the less sugar you crave, etc. But the scale can fuck with you. So like I feel like when you know how much weight you're going to lose in a pee, it becomes unhealthy. And that's literally what your life becomes. I'll weigh myself 3 times a day. And it's like, have I pooped, have I not pooped? Can I pee and lose more weight?
Yes.
You know, how much weight am I going to keep from eating this sweet potato? Because it becomes a juggle of
How much
that.
weight do you normally drop for a fight?
So what's interesting is that it also increases, for me, I don't know if this is the case for everyone, but the conversations I've had with women specifically, because there's more of a hormonal juggle, I guess, is that it becomes slightly more with every camp.
Okay.
So I would say I normally, it's safe and advisable to cut about 10% of your body weight.
Okay.
So if I'm walking around
Okay.
at 57 kgs, I'm going to cut 5 kgs
Yeah.
of weight. For me, in the past, that's been about 3 kgs of regular like calorie restriction
Yeah.
weight, and then 2 kgs of water 24 hours before
Yeah.
the fight. Which means that when I stand on the scale when I've got inside the cage the
Yeah.
next day, I'm weighing around 55, 56 kgs
Okay.
again.
Yes.
What I've noticed with every fight, I've put on a little bit more weight after the fight, and then have a little bit
okay.
more to cut. So I think the body, again, that post starvation
Yeah.
obesity thing, it very much depends on how I'm able to control my cravings
Yeah.
post the fight. And this idea, I mean, you mentioned it earlier where you said this idea of rewarding yourself. If you
Yeah.
reward yourself with this treat, can you stop at that one?
Yeah.
The work that I've had to do is looking at what rewards are. So when you start to look, and this is by no means coming at a high and mighty space, because I'm a work in progress where this is concerned. But when you look at food, junk food,
Yeah.
shit, as a reward, it's quite interesting because
Yeah.
you're physically putting poison inside your body.
Yeah.
So why is it a reward? Like, you're going to feel like shit afterwards.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to move. You can't perform. You're going to put on weight rapidly.
Yeah.
But we look at that chocolate, that burger, that pizza as a reward when it's actually fucking poison. It's the
Yeah.
same as alcohol. Like the end of a
Yeah.
end of a rough week, let me reward myself with a glass of wine, but you're putting poison inside your body. Anyway, that's my work that I still got to do. But the thing that's really been tough as a female, specifically, I think, I don't know, maybe you guys can relate. When you stand on that scale and you've made weight, now you've done all the work, you've cut the water weight, you are as lean and muscular as you're ever going to get. So I have that weigh-in photo where I'm like standing and I'm flexing and I look, whatever my dream body might be that I've imagined, it's there.
Yeah.
Like I can feel it. I've been in it. I think for a lot of women who go through a weight loss journey, I have it. When I have women come to me and they're like, Jess, I want to lose 10 kilograms. Sometimes they bring me a fucking picture of a celebrity and they're like, I want to look like this.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm not going to quite, but we'll try.
Yeah.
Okay. So most women, I would say 90% of women chase their dream body their whole life, but they never actually live to see it, which is quite sad, but also almost better for you because you when you get to inhabit that body for like 24 hours, and then that body's gone. It's quite hard because now I have the physical photo, and like a week later, I look in the mirror and I look like a fat fuck, even though I'm still in the 1% of people that are in shape in the whole world.
It's just
type of
you
thing.
put yourself through like a process whereby you're at the most cut almost that your body could get to.
I'm fucking dehydrated. I haven't eaten in 48 hours. Like, it's not a happy place, but body's banging. But it's not, you can't stay there for long. And, you know, the cerebral part of me can talk myself off the ledge and be like, you know, have all the conversations around like how you know that it's not sustainable and like you didn't eat for 48 hours. Blah, blah, blah. But like the insecure female that's growing up looking at beauty magazines, like she wants that back.
That's interesting, man. Yeah, it's like that how the danger of getting what you want.
Yeah.
But knowing that it's almost like what an interesting thought experiment. It's like you get a day, if you think about how important our bodies are to us and how like if you could say to somebody, you can have a Porsche or you can have your dream body. Like I think a lot of people would go for the body. And so it's almost like some kind of like magic thing where you get that body, you get it, but only for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And then you have to try find contentment afterwards. Shit, okay. And have you found contentment afterwards?
Sure, that's a tough one. I think it's definitely a work in progress. Like I said, there's the cerebral part of me that can talk myself through it, and then there's the other part of me that just has feelings. I think for a lot of fighters, it's a journey of seeing that dream body, not being able to attain it for a very long time, and then constantly grinding back for it.
Yeah.
I think the difference for men and women, though, is what you touched on earlier, is that men tend to celebrate their weight gain a little bit more than women do. So I'll give you an example. A guy will walk into the gym the weekend, the next week after fighting, and he would have put on 5 kgs, 10 kgs. He'll have a little bit of like a bloated belly, and guys will pat him on the tummy and be like, "Oh, you enjoyed your burger, but nice, congratulations."
Yeah.
No girl's ever going to do that to another girl, ever. You know what I mean? In fact, girls are kind of giving each other that side eye, going like, "Geez, she got fat this weekend."
Yes, yeah.
So I think there's a little bit more leeway for men potentially than there is for women where that's concerned. Whether he's standing at home and hating his body in the mirror or not, I don't know. Because I'm not a guy.
Yeah.
But I can certainly feel it.
Yeah.
I'd say a week after the fight, I still feel like my life is good, where I'm eating everything I want to eat, and the body hasn't quite changed too much. 2 week, that 10-day mark to 2 week mark, it's like, now I'm fat.
Yeah, I mean, so what I can relate to is like having had periods of my life of when I've been like ripped, then you're always like, oh, like that was okay, and if I'm not there, how can I put my body out there? I think that's definitely, it's like, how can I be happy with this when I've reached that? And I think, say, for me, sort of touching back on what I'd been saying earlier, is that the one thing about a fight is that you have to lose that weight. Like it's not about your fucking ego or like how much you worry about what people look like. It's like, if you don't, you miss weight. And, if you have to fight in a high weight category, you have to fight some bigger dude. So it's like so I think when I was younger, like I was like, I really wanted to be ripped. And so like I was prepared to like not eat and forego things. Now I'm like, am I going to drop weight just so that I can look a bit skid so some fucking randoms on the beach will maybe think something? And so when you know that it has to happen for a fight, I quite enjoy that process of like, okay, now I need to lose it. But I mean, it's interesting because like what you're saying about rewards, like I also often like be like, okay, you've made weight, let's, like last year I had 4 fights, so I was like, okay, afterwards, like let me go and fucking, and afterwards you're like, did that even feel that great? And it's like way better in your mind when you're depriving yourself. You're like, oh, I would love some pizza. Then I eat the pizza and I just feel like bloated and like weak. And I think what I've been trying to aim for is like, and I guess it's a lifelong thing of finding that balance, of being able to eat some nice things, not let it go out of control, but also to not have a diet of deprivation, which is it's tricky,
and it's also not sustainable to constantly deprive yourself. So like the balanced, yogi in me will talk to you about like how, exactly like you said, how it's good to be able to treat yourself here and still have balance, like eat your veggies and your protein, but also have a sugary treat every now and again. Then the other part of me is at war with that, going like, I know I'm not going to feel good after I have that thing anyway, so why even go past that point? And then there's that addict in me who, as much as I've replaced my substance use for like healthier channels like training and exercise or whatever, there is this other part of me that it does use food, and you mentioned it does use food as a way to soothe, how to deal with feelings. And it's fascinating because I sat with one of my clients who has been going through this weight loss journey, but definitely has some eating disorder stuff attached to it. And she spoke about like when she has a bad day, like she literally sits on the kitchen floor and like shoves white bread down her throat. It's almost like she's trying to stuff the feelings in. And I had this epiphany. I was like, you know what? We are taught to self-soothe with food from the minute we're born. Every time we cry, we get a boob in our mouth, or we get a bottle in our mouth, and it's like, shh, you be quiet, like everything's gonna be better with this milk that's going into your mouth. So like from the day we're born, we learn that food is this mechanism for coping. And so for me, I found towards this kind of later part of my life, I use food almost as a punishment rather than a soothing method, which is also quite fucking scary. So I sabotage myself and my weight loss journey, if it's a fight weight loss journey, by eating. So it's almost like the opposite thing, where instead of rewarding myself, it's like, you were lazy today, you didn't train, or you sucked today at this, so like, fuck you, you stupid idiot, like you will eat this piece of bread now. And then I sit back and I'm like, wow, that's really dark. Are you okay? But it's interesting how we use food.
I think truth be told, we all have fucking dark things, and I do think often when things are going bad, we often then do, like for whatever reason, you feel a bit weak. Like I feel when things are going well in my life, it's like like if I'm exercising, if I'm feeling bad, then I want to eat nicely. Whereas if it's like you're feeling a bit shit, then you sort of want to,
kind of sit there and sit and wallow in that. And I think exercise and eating go hand in hand because of that. We're often again, I can talk about various clients that I've had, and they'll tell me like, I need to exercise, and I'm like, cool, but let's talk about what you're eating. And like, no, my eating's fine, I just need to exercise. And I'm like, no, it's because you're eating shit all weekend, and we can all fall into that pattern. I do it too, where I'm like fucking perfect Monday to Thursday, Friday evening comes, and then it's like a little bit of chocolate, a little bit of this, and then it's just like goes downhill from there.
Yes.
And then you start on a Monday feeling like crap, starting the process all over again.
Yeah.
You wonder why you can't lose weight, because you can't eat clean for 3-4 days and then eat like shit for 3 days on the weekend and hope to see a result.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because, like for me, I've always struggled with balance. So that's why I just don't drink, because I don't want to have to navigate drinking response. It's just too tricky, and it's like with sugary stuff, I just pretty much don't have sugary stuff. Not because I view it as evil, but because once I open that door, it's, and even we've spoken about like with my social media, I'm like, I'll try like only look in the evening, because otherwise I'll spend the whole day doom scrolling. And when it comes to food, you can't go fucking cold turkey on food. You have to eat, and finding that, because for me it feels good, and then it's like, okay, well, when do I stop? And I think what I've just realized, I was thinking, when I put on weight, I injured my knee when I was did my ACL the first time, and I had injuries for a long time. I couldn't exercise, and then it's interesting because I think I put on weight because I've found that no matter how much I'm exercising, if I eat shit, I'll put on weight. So people think, oh, I can run off this pizza, and like if you would know calories burned versus, and what I think happens, certainly in my case, is you feel shit and you're not exercising, and when you feel shit, you want to almost reinforce it,
Well, that's definitely that's what happened to me after my last fight now, is I went straight after the fight into surgery. I might as well tell the story now because I haven't got to tell it yet, so we'll do it quickly. So I had surgery. Everyone thinks that the surgery was because of the fight.
Yes.
Because I got elbowed so hard that, I don't know, I needed like cranial surgery.
Yes, yeah.
No, it wasn't that bad. It was like 8 stitches and I was fine. But actually what happened is I had breast implants just after having my second kid.
Yes.
And I burst a breast implant 2 weeks before 2 weeks before my fight. So the running joke that I have is that I fought with one titty. But it's like literally I woke up one day and they were like that. Went off to the surgeon and she was like, yeah, you've burst your breast implants and you need surgery. Be careful because you're actually going to get silicone poisoning.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever, can I still fight? Because now you've signed a contract, they've done the marketing, this chick's fucking flying over from London to come and fight you. Like, you got to show up.
Yeah.
And I had already pulled out of the fight due to a rib injury in December before that. And there was a whole bunch of like trolls on Instagram that were like, $5 says Jess is going to pull out before this fight even happens. So like fuck you, I can't pull out.
Yeah.
Like, I'll fight with one titty. So surgery was booked for 2 weeks after the fight. So lost the fight.
Okay, I just want to ask quickly about because that is commitment to the grind. Like, you have people like, I'll do this. Like, are you prepared to go into the ring with one breast ruptured, man? And was it like painful?
So no, it wasn't painful.
Okay.
Weirdly enough. That was the surgeon kept asking me the same thing. He's like, are you sure it's not sore? But to be honest, I mean, I was training for a fight when I had COVID for the first time, and same question I got was like, weren't you sore? And I was like, yeah, I'm always sore. like
pain is constant, man. Yeah.
Like, so it's hard to know like what was COVID and what was just body aches from like overtraining. Same thing. Like the actual breast wasn't sore, but like my pecs were sore, my arms were sore. Like who fucking knows what's sore? It's just, it hurts. And you're just basically biting down on your gum guard and like going like fuck 2 weeks before this fight. So basically, I knew I was going straight from the fight into surgery. Lost the fight, like was black and blue after the fight. Like I didn't even recognize myself in the mirror. Like I got fucked up. But I went on my little eating journey that you normally do.
Yeah.
What I can say, and you'll agree with this, is that your post-fight meal tastes a lot better once you've won.
Yes.
The pizza tastes way better after a victory.
It goes from like something like if you've lost, it's pitiful, and if you've won, it's like a well-earned, like your triumphant banquet.
Exactly that. So I think same thing as what you mentioned with your ACL is I went straight into surgery after that, and then with the nature of the surgery, like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't lift my arms above my head. I couldn't have any impact, no jumping, no running, like fuck all.
Yeah.
She even told me, like, she was like, for 6 weeks after 6 weeks you can start light walking. I'm like, are you mad?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? So like 2 days after the surgery, I was like walking around the reservoir, like trying to get my steps in. So I think, when you sit down after being used to being active, and now all you can do is sit and wait for an injury to recover.
Yeah.
What are I just watching trash TV and fucking
Sure.
eating chocolates?
I mean,
Like,
just
what else
that's
can
if
I
you
do?
think about layers of darkness, having built. So, irrespective of the result of the fight, you're going to have a dump afterwards because it's just, it's done. The result doesn't go the way you'd hoped, and you've injured yourself. So you can't. Because for me, the number one way in which I soothe myself is exercise. Yeah. So that's taken out. It's, look, I'm very impressed that you're not 120 kgs, man.
Well, it got to about 65 kgs, which is the heaviest I've ever been in my entire life.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting on your butt right there, so I think the other thing about exercising is that it's being productive. And I mentioned this in another podcast where I said, like, you can measure, everybody tends to measure their self-worth by their level of productivity.
Yeah.
So when you are sitting on your ass doing nothing, and you have nothing else to do but eat and look in the mirror and watch the fucking Kardashians.
Yeah.
Like, it's a cycle of darkness that just perpetuates.
Yeah.
If you are at least moving, even though you're not losing weight, or even if you're eating shit on the weekend and then moving, at least you're doing something. But I think when you sit still and you stop, it's very hard to start again. So that was the thing, is the scale was going up, and I could have a chat with myself and go, obviously you're going to put on weight, you're sitting on your bum, you can't move, you can't exercise, you have an injury, you're not being lazy. But then, like, the monkey in me, monkey brain in me was like, you're a fat fuck, you're undisciplined, like, look at you, all of that stuff. And then you can go around the cycle of just like, it got dark.
And what was your sort of moment where was it just when the injury healed?
I got to move again.
Okay.
So I think the risk that I ran is that I started moving too soon.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to chase that weight, and the weight came off slow.
Yeah.
Chasing the moving quicker than, and for me, it's always been difficult to manage the eating without the moving.
Yeah.
Once you move, it's easier to eat clean, but it's hard to eat clean, and which is what the advice was that I got from everybody else, was like, just be militant with your diet. I was like, I'm sitting by myself, no one's watching me, like, I'm sad, I lost a fight.
Exactly.
Like, I don't want to shove this. There was one dark moment. I went down to a coffee shop in Cape Town called Truth Cafe. They make really good croissants.
Yeah.
Like, evilly good croissants. And I went there to do some work, and their chocolate croissants are great.
Yeah.
And it was like 3 chocolate croissants and 2 plain croissants in. This waiter kept bringing me, and he's like, are you okay? But like, now I've still got bruising from the fights. Got like my shades on. I don't know what he must have thought I was. And I was like, cool, 5 croissants in the morning is not like, is there like a croissant anonymous? Like, it's not okay.
I mean, it sounds pretty good now from where I'm sitting. But it reminds me, probably one of my peak darkest moments was like, I went to the shops and I just would sometimes get these cravings. And I got something like a giant slab or 2 giant slabs of chocolate, and I had finished one before I got to the car. I got home and I'd eaten like all this chocolate. And then I was like, at that point, I was a bit overweight, and I was like, and then I tried, tried my hand at making myself vomit. But I couldn't even do it. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, you've like failed at that.
You're not even a good
And then from all the sugar, you start like fucking buzzing and you feel cuck. But it's interesting because I mean, I'd imagine, I've found that I'm always so scared of being easy on myself, because I'm like, oh, if I go easy on myself, whatever the avenue, I'm gonna it's gonna be oblivion. And I've been like, actually, the kinder I am to myself, as much as everyone's like, oh, be kind to yourself, but like, actually, it works better, And I think, I don't know how many people are too easy on themselves. I think most people are too hard on themselves. And I think, all these things, they come down. Someone said to me the other day, said, imagine if you could just go through life knowing that you're enough, And I think if one could try thinking like, I'm enough in what I do, in conversations, in my work. I don't have to reach all these things, And I think when it comes to how we view our bodies, I would say, I always think you got to be easy on yourself, but also be easy on yourself to the extent that like, if you're beating yourself up and you're like unhappy, obviously that's not ideal, but you can't then beat yourself up about the fact that you beat yourself up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yes, we have moments where we fucking not positive in our heads and we're too hard on ourselves. And we would like, one wants to move away from that, but you also have to like understand, we're all works in process. But I really do believe that the more we can feel like okay with ourselves, I mean, that is ultimately the dream. And I think, it is, if you can reach a point of feeling okay of how you are, irrespective of what you're looking like that's true power, because you're not like worried. It's not contingent on like, oh, I put on weight, I suck now. But at the same time, if you are aiming towards a healthy, functional, because I think that's what we're always looking for. Like you said, it's like more healthy than as opposed to ripped or skinny or something. I feel like you're actually more likely to reach that goal by being easier on yourself. And like I've said, like the times when I've been so hard on myself hasn't correlated with the most ripped. Like the time when I was the most overweight and I was like, you're a fat fuck. It didn't, like the self-hate didn't really work, So I think it's like this process of being more, being a bit easier on yourself and having faith that you'll get there. And I mean, it's interesting because I've had periods where I was like super ripped, but I was fucking not healthy. I was either at a period when I was partying really hard and just like not really eating, or sometimes when I've just been working, and you can like look good, but it's not actually healthy. So I think that's also, I think, you can look for optimal appearance, optimal health, and I think what I'm always looking for is optimal happiness,
Sure.
So it's like a kind of a midway in between that,
You reminded me of something now when you touched on the bulimia. So in this kind of standing in front of the mirror, looking at this body that I wasn't happy with, I then went and did this research around, is this a fighter's problem?
Yeah.
And I found out that, one of the most famous female fighters of all time, Ronda Rousey, she speaks in her book about being bulimic and how she would use purging as a way to make weight for her judo competitions before she started fighting. And multiple fighters I've then read up since then have also disclosed like various either eating disorders or levels of body dysmorphia based on the space of fighting. Then another interesting one that came up was a fighter who spoke around how he came to kind of view his body, the fighter's body, as the only reason why he was having success. And I think that also speaks to what I was feeling, is this thing of like, if I'm not a fighter anymore, if I can't be a fighter, if I'm injured, or I can't be active anymore, then what am I? So besides being fat, what value do I have to share if I'm no longer a fighter? And I think it's the case for many of us in different professions where we attach so much of our identity to what we do for a living or to our Instagram profile. Or me, in the case of being a trainer in the space, besides being a fighter, I'm a poster child for health and fitness for many women. So if I'm now no longer that, then what am I?
Yeah, that's tough, eh? You're right. It's like, why should someone give you money to...
You're clearly not healthy.
Yeah.
Clearly not in shape. You don't have any discipline.
Shit.
So it's like this spiral. Do you find in your industry it's just as cutthroat in terms, or is there scope to be more out of shape?
Well, how's this? This is interesting. So working as an actor, when I was overweight, I got more work, because I was like the entertaining fat jiggly dude. I was in a beer advert where I'm in a jacuzzi and I'm very hairy and I had a big boop. And like the concept of the advert is the dude is at like a bad party and he like goes to the jacuzzi and I'm in it. And he's like, oh my God. And then he drinks the beer and gets taken to like a party where there's this beautiful woman dancing around. So like I was the before essentially. And so I got that kind of work and then I lost weight and then I had to compete with, because when you're like, if you think about bigger actors, Jack Black or something, it has a lot of comedic thing. But then I was having to compete against these like fucking good looking dudes. And I remember going to castings where these like beautiful, like Scandinavian men with tan skin and these like luminescent eyes, So it's not really, to be honest, like it hasn't really helped me. Well, maybe it has. You just get different roles or something. But I'm also probably not ripped enough to be on Men's Health. But I mean, it's interesting because I think very rarely do I look at someone and go, oh, they're overweight. And I think if someone makes me think about how we talk to ourselves, because if, say, a friend of mine came up to me and was like, oh, I feel overweight, like I know, and this is not just something I'd say, I'd be like, bro, you look good, you know, like don't, like, because we so much less, like I don't look at someone and go, oh, they look, and so I guess it's like, I mean, I don't know, what would you, when you have a client and they sort of say that they're really unhappy with their body, like what, and obviously there's a, you know, and that's part of the joy is you're in a profession where you can help people sort of move towards it, but I guess it's also a balance of like, if you never have a point of happiness, you're never going to feel, if you can never be happy with how you look, you'll never reach that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think the theme that's come up for me a few times with clients who are on this weight loss journey, and I've touched on it previously, but it's hard to hear for a lot of clients, is that if you believe that losing the weight is going to finally make you happy, you are mistaken. So if you are a miserable person, or if you feel like you're not good enough, losing the weight isn't going to make you suddenly feel like you're not good enough. There's a lot of internal work that needs to happen with that. And that work almost needs to happen at the same time.
Yes.
So that when you finally do reach that goal weight, whatever it is for you, that you've got the emotional intelligence to kind of inhabit that new body of yours. Otherwise,
and know it for what it is, you know. Yeah.
Exactly. Otherwise, you run the risk of feeling like the fat fuck that you were while you're in this new, and then you're just skinny and miserable.
Yes.
And like no one wants to be around that. I think people make a lot of excuses for people who are overweight and lack confidence, or people that are overweight and are self-degrading. You know, you're like, okay, they're going through something, like they've got stuff going on. But when you're in shape and you still have that stuff, people are just like, no, you're just being full of shit. You know what I mean? So you almost need to do the internal and external work at the same time if you are in a weight loss journey. It is. But then, of course, there's many athletes who have that internal battle that they need to go through, that physically on the outside they look, and I think that's why we less forgiving towards them. Because it's like, what the fuck are you complaining about? You're in shape, you're strong, you're an athlete, but inside you've got this whole,
It's funny, it's like you're not allowed to, like, I would do anything to look like you. You're not allowed to not feel happy, which is almost, most people have hang-ups and stuff, irrespective of where you get to. But I mean, it's this conversation actually, I mean, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's healing, but it makes me think like, for me, I've sometimes thought the challenge of maintaining a healthy weight for me, it's an ongoing battle, you know, and like you trial and error, like, you know, for example, like lately I've been trying to eat more, well, not like I've been eating more fatty foods, and I'll find out in a couple of weeks if that just makes me fatter or if it like keeps me fuller and how your body responds. And I think there is a kind of like, if sometimes like a moment of satisfaction or enjoyment in learning and in battling out that kind of journey to be like, you know, you like some days you're there, some days, but it's more about how do you kind of like, you know, how do you navigate it? And also, I suppose, to be more like, yeah, sometimes you're going to put on weight, and that's just part of the tides and ebbs and flows.
There's seasons.
Yeah.
I think that's what got me through.
That's good seasons.
That's what got me through that dark space. Was like, it was actually Mike that kept coming back to me with it, and at the time, like I'm very arrogantly sitting at the end, the aftermath of it. But when I was in it, I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's seasons for things, and like you go through fatter seasons or lower confidence seasons because often of a reason. You went through a depression, you had a loss, you got fired, you had an injury. Like often there's a valid external reason for that season. And when that season passes, there's, you know, a new season.
Yeah.
And I think around dieting, and a lot of people with body dysmorphia or weight loss issues go through these yo-yo diets of the next fad thing, and we're always chasing, you know, some miracle drug to get in shape. And it's interesting what you mentioned around, I guess, the experiment that you're doing with yourself right now with fatty foods. I think for the longest time, being in this health and nutrition coaching space, I preached one way, whatever I believe to be, you know, the way. And I think there are many ways. And if you can, this is the yogi in me speaking now, but if you can observe yourself for a little bit and be curious about the experiment that is your life every now and again, and go like, how do I actually feel when I eat this stuff? Whether it's protein, animal protein, a vegan lifestyle, fatty foods, sugary foods. Like the times when I'm able to take myself outside of my body, so to speak, and observe, I often find that it's the spirals of eating the shit when I feel very shit. And you can go in the spiral of hoping that next sugar chase is going to make me feel better. But like 1 week or 2 weeks down the line, you're like, I just feel depressed.
Yeah.
And that food, that like toxic box, shitty processed stuff, it just perpetuates feeling depressed, feeling demotivated, all of that stuff. So having a little bit of, I think, nutrition understanding for me has been very, very useful in bringing myself out when I go into those deep, dark kind of spaces.
Yeah.
But understanding that when you are there, that it will pass. It should
Yeah,
pass.
yeah. That's really, I mean, that I think translates to many aspects of life, is that there are seasons of feeling good, feeling successful, feeling powerful, competent, and feeling really, good with how you look. And I think what I would want to say, like, if there are people listening and if you feel fantastic about your body, I would encourage you to continue it, and I don't think that there's anything wrong if you don't have hang-ups. But if you also have like shit that you worry about your body, you don't feel good, I would say it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and I promise you don't look as bad as you worry that you do. Like, we're always so hard and so critical on ourselves, and if you could just look at it with someone else's eyes, you'd realize like you're way better than you think you are. And
I think, at the risk of sounding too airy-fairy on that note, for me, in closing, I think if you realize that how attractive a good person always appears over a terrible person or a bitter person. You can look at like a hot chick and she's in fucking shape, her body's banging, but she's a complete bitch and she's not attractive anymore. And the same thing goes for guys. So like, if you are willing to just work on the inside, the outside naturally looks so much more attractive.
Yes, sure. No, it reminds me, there's a Roald Dahl, that I think it's the Twits. It says if you have kind thoughts and stuff, it does start to show. And I think when I think of people I find attractive, it doesn't correlate with a physical thing. It's like, what kind of human are they? And I think as long as you can always hold on to it and anchor yourself with that, it helps navigating these kind of transient shifts in how we look.
All right, so that's all that we've got time for today. Anton, thanks. That was really, really cool. And if this was useful to you, please like, share, of course, subscribe. We'd like to keep growing this podcast. But until next time, bye for now.